RK College of Agriculture, Seahawk, Rajmata Vijay Sindhya Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, Gwalior, your host for wonderful evening, and I am really delightful that you are giving your valuable time for the thoughtful evening and second day of international training on future in agriculture and agriculture in future. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome each one of you present out here. So without delay, we could start this very important evening with huge round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, our event is about to get more special. Our event is going to is about to get more special as we welcome the exceptional guest for today's evening to share his insight with us, Dr. Vijay Singh. Dr. Vijay Singh, a soil chemist by training and one of 10 national professors of Indian Council of Agriculture Research from 2006 to 2012. Dr. Vijay Singh is presently associated with Punjab Agriculture University, Ludhiana, Punjab, India. As an INSA honorary scientist, he served as senior soil chemist from 1994 to 2006 and as INSA senior scientist from 2012 to 2017 to sustain high yield levels of rice and wheat without adversely affecting soil health in Punjab, also known as Granary of India. Dr. Vijay Singh has been working on different aspects of fertilizer management for more than 3 decades. His contribution to nitrogen balance in soil plant system have led to better understanding of enhancing nitrogen use efficiency in rice wheat cropping system, fertilizer nitrogen related environmental pollution, and integrated nutrient management. His work on site-specific and need-based application of nitrogen fertilizer to rice and wheat using leaf color chart, chlorophyll meter, and optical sensor should greatly economize fertilizer nitrogen usage. His research effort on basic and applied aspect of integrated management of fertilizer, animal manure, green manure, and crop residue have provided scientifically sound directions for achieving not only sustainable yields in rice wheat system, but also for maintaining soil fertility for future generation. Dr. Vijay Singh has contributed to 360 publications, including 180 plus research papers in Journal of National and International Reputed, 50 reviews of which 8 are in Advances in Agronomy and 50 plus book chapters. Dr. Singh research on different aspects of fertilizer management, crop nutrition, and environmental issues related to fertilizer has been published in high impact factor journal and publication authored by him have a 10,200 plus citation index, H index of 51 and I-10 index of 99. Dr. Vijay is a fellow of Indian National Science Academy, National Academy of Agriculture Sciences, and Indian Society of Soil Science. He has been decorated with several awards, including Rafi Ahmed Kidwai Memorial Prize of Indian Council of Agriculture Research, the most prestigious award in agriculture science in India. The Fertilizer Association of India has honored him with its Silver Jubilee Award 2 times in 1984 and 2001. National Academy of Agriculture Science honored him with its Recognition Award in 2000 and Dr. N.S. Randhawa Memorial Award in 2008. He is recipient of Professor K.S. Bilgrami Award 2009 and Professor B.D. Tilak Lecture Award 2014 of Indian National Science Academy. The Indian Society of Soil Science honored him with Platinum Jubilee Award for lifetime contribution to enhancing fertilizer nitrogen use efficiency in cereal crops in 2019. In 2020, the Fertilizer Association of India awarded him the Golden Jubilee Award for excellence for best work done in the field of plant nutrition. Dr. Vijay Singh delivered Jain Mukherjee Indian Society of Soil Science Foundation Lecture in 2006, Dr. G.S. Sekhon Memorial Lecture in 2012, and Dr. Radha Raman Agrawal Memorial Lecture in 2015. He was also selected as Vice Chairman of Commission on Soil Fertility and Plant Nutrition of International Union of Soil Science during 2010-14. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Asta, for introducing me. Although You have spoken too much.
So you are a hero in field of agriculture, especially soil sensor.
Yes,
It's our honor to welcome you, sir.
nothing like that. I'm just like you. Well, I'm very pleased to be a part of this series of lectures which are talking about future. You have used the word future two times in your topic. So, when we talk about our future, soil becomes very important. Our future lies depends upon what kind of soil we are having now and what kind of soil we are going to leave for our children. So, and when we talk about soil, it's yeah. Well, let me share with the screen. But, yeah. So when we talk about soil, yeah, yeah. So before saying anything else, I must appreciate or I must talk about how important soil is and how our future depends upon soil. But soil is something which is very much underappreciated, uh, and we generally take it for granted. But you will realize that this miraculous substance called soil is key to life on Earth. There are a couple of things which it does, which are all essential for our living on the earth. Like it produces our food, filters and purifies our water, reduces flooding, regulates the atmosphere, and plays a crucial role in driving the carbon and nitrogen cycles. It is also one of the most biodiverse habitats on Earth. And there is, according to one estimate, more than 99.7% of human food comes from the soil environment. So that means soil is a life sustaining natural resource. And we have about 13 billion hectare of land area on the earth, and of that cropland accounts for only 11%. 27% is pasture, 32% is forest, and rest we cannot put to any use. So you can imagine we have very limited area for crop production, and uh, it's our duty rather to conserve and protect our soils, but also ensure that these remain healthy. This is very important thing. This is something very futuristic thing. I mean, we there is no choice with us except to keep our soils healthy in future. Our the very existence of our future generations will depend upon how good soil we give them. So, uh, keeping this in mind, uh, and then and then uh, I will try to come to my topic. And before that, I would like to discuss with you that agriculture and natural ecosystems are two different things. Natural ecosystems have been existing since time, unlimited time. But what happens is that in natural ecosystems, nutrients are almost completely recycled and they don't need any input from outside. But in agriculture, we remove nutrients, we export nutrients in the form of grains, and whatever nutrients we remove, we have to compensate our soil by applying nutrients through fertilizers and manures. So we have soil, we want to keep them healthy, but at the same time, in agriculture ecosystem which we are having now, uh, we have to apply fertilizers or nutrients through fertilizers to keep our system going and we to produce enough food for the future generations. So there are two things. Uh, we have fertilizers and we have soil. I'm devoting this lecture particularly to nitrogen fertilizers because they are used in the largest quantity. If you just try to imagine the use of fertilizer nitrogen in crop production in general supports soil health because whatever nitrogen is removed by our high yielding varieties, we have these help us to replenish those nutrients, and then Uh, Without using nitrogen fertilizers, we cannot produce the cereal yield levels of 3 to 10 tons per hectare, which we are getting nowadays. And you will agree with me that without supplementing our soils with nitrogen fertilizers, our soils do not have a capacity to produce more than 1 to 2 tons per hectare, which is generally the yield level which we see in our no and control plots in our experiments. So, due to this reason, almost all the farmers here in India or anywhere else, they apply nitrogen fertilizers to keep crop production levels high and keep, I will repeat, to keep soils healthy. And
Only
so I'll be, but there are also people who say that because of applying a lot of fertilizers or nitrogen fertilizers, our soils have their health has been deteriorated. So the discussion of my this present today's discussion is how and when nitrogen fertilizers are really good for keeping soil healthy and when they are deleterious. So let's see how it comes. Before that, just have a look in terms of how much nitrogen fertilizer we are using in India. In 2020, total NP and K use was 26.94 million tons, of which about 75% was nitrogen. If you look at the data from India and China, I've taken China because China is number one in using fertilizers. Uh, in 2015, China used something like 29% of total nitrogen fertilizers, which was used in the world, which was 106.6 million tons. India used 16.3. By the time it's 2020, India consumption of nitrogen fertilizers reached 20.4 million tons, which is 18% of the total world for nitrogen consumption. So that means, but in China, if you just look, this is very important. They have reduced their fertilizer nitrogen use from 29% to 22.8%. That means, if you look at the graphs on the right hand side, the first graph shows that the food production in India is increasing. It looks like that it is increasing because of use of nitrogen fertilizers. It gives a sort of false impression to our politicians that by applying more and more and more nitrogen fertilizers, we can produce enough food. I mean, by by establishing or by making making more urea plants, perhaps we can solve the food problem which we are facing or which our future generations will be facing. But that's not the truth. We have to look into it, whether the amount of fertilizer which we are applying now, is it good for the future generations, or we can move like that. There's another graph which I'm showing here. This shows partial factor productivity of nitrogen. If you look at the shape of this graph, uh, in 1960, when we started using nitrogen fertilizers, the partial factor productivity was very high. I mean, we were able to produce 350 kilogram of grains per kg of nitrogen fertilizer applied. But by the time we reached 2000 or 2020, this partial factor productivity has gone to just 25 or something, even less than that. So that shows that something is happening which is not good, because partial factor productivity of nitrogen fertilizer is decreasing, has decreased very rapidly, and it is not increasing. So this was the thing which prompted me to talk to you, that let's see how fertilizer nitrogen is really behaving in terms of soil health. So before let's talk about soil health. Soil health, in simple words, soil health is how well the soil does what it is supposed to do. I mean, our supposed to do, when we say in agriculture, means we want to produce more and more food grains. So if it is producing more and more food grains, we say it's happy. We are happy with it. But soil health is much more than that. The most important health indicator of the soil, agricultural soil, is soil organic matter. It contains more organic carbon than global vegetation and atmosphere combined. This is well known. And if a soil starts losing organic matter, it's very sure that its health deteriorates. Why? Because soil organic matter is the storehouse of nitrogen in the soil, and it positively influences various physical, chemical, and biological properties of the soil. And if a soil starts losing organic matter, all these things they get affected. So this soil organic, from the point of view of nitrogen fertilizers or fertilizer as a whole, soil organic matter content is the most important indicator of soil health. Uh, Another way of looking at soil health is it is in terms of ability of the soil to respond to agriculture interventions. If you look at as a time immemorial, when we started organized agriculture, or we have been tilling our soils. First thing we start to produce food was we started tilling the soil, and it started with evolution of modern agriculture. And tillage, it is a one intervention also which also leads to losses of soil organic matter. It means by repeated tillage, soil health deteriorates. Second thing we second thing we did was irrigation. Another intervention is irrigation. Again, irrigation affects different properties of soils and different processes in soil. But third thing on which we are focusing today is fertilizers. Uh, these fertilizers are very recent thing. Uh, Large scale use of fertilizer started only with Green Revolution. That came after 1950, or in India we started practicing Green Revolution something like 1960, late 60s or early 70s. And you will agree with me that fertilizers, being chemicals, they can alter different natural function of the soils. And unfortunately, many farmers tend to apply fertilizers even more than recommended rates. They have a feeling that if we apply more fertilizers, perhaps they want to avoid the risk of yield loss. And the subsidized availability of nitrogen fertilizers in our country is another factor of large scale use of nitrogen fertilizers, because a bag of urea which we sell, which our government which is sold in India to the farmers around 300 rupees, its actual cost in the international market is about 1,300 rupees. So you can imagine, when we are giving this fertilizers at a very cheap rate to the farmers, so they think that let's add more of it in the soil, but they are ignorant that by applying more nitrogen fertilizers or more of these chemicals in the soil, many things are going to change, including soil health. So there's a need to understand what happens when the soil fertilizer nitrogen is added to the soil, and what sort of things change, and how we should modify them so that soils remain healthy for our future generations. So the trends in fertilizer use. So when fertilizers were introduced in India in big way, as I told you, along with Green Revolution, because um, Green Revolution was started when we started using high yielding varieties of rice and wheat. Because they were high yielding, so they needed more of large, because we were large amount of nutrients from the soils were exported in the form of grains. So soils got depleted of nitrogen, and then it was the fertilizer nitrogen came as a package of Green Revolution, because if we are using high yielding varieties, we must apply a lot of fertilizer nitrogen as well to replenish the losses of nitrogen in the soil. Initially, farmers were hesitant to use fertilizer nitrogen, particularly urea. But once they realized that high yields of rice and wheat cannot be achieved without applying adequate amount of fertilizer nitrogen year after year, uh, they started using it. And many of them, I will use the word many of them, they started using it in large quantities, because they were highly subsidized and cheap compared to other inputs. So, with this type of scenario, there are three distinct groups of fertilizer which we can found in our country. One, those who are using recommended dose. The recommended dose means the doses of fertilizer nitrogen which our extension agencies give to the farmer, that you have to apply this much to rice, this much to wheat, this much to this different crops. So they have those recommended doses are worked out by conducting a series of experiments on different type of soils and different type of climates, and then we come up with a level of fertilizer nitrogen, that this is the ideal level or ideal dose of fertilizer which should be applied to a crop. And then there are a group of farmers which, because of fertilizer is cheap, or with those who don't want to, they want to avoid risk of yield loss, they apply more than the recommended doses. They are Some farmers are habitual now to apply more fertilizers, and some farmer, third category of the farmer is that they apply less than the recommended doses. They may not be able to afford nitrogen, more fertilizer nitrogen, or due to other reasons. So that there are three distinct categories now we can find in our fields in our in country. One who use recommended doses, one who use more than recommended doses, and one who use less than recommended doses. So I will try to analyze what happens when we apply recommended doses, more than recommended doses, or less than recommended doses. So before we start analyzing, the one of the most important thing this is soil itself. You will agree with me that even before we started applying nitrogen to the soil, plants were still growing, crops were still growing. It is not that soil doesn't have any nitrogen, soil doesn't have nitrogen in it. In fact, a typical agricultural soil contains from 0.10 to 0.15% nitrogen, and that translates into about 5,000 kilograms nitrogen per hectare in the top 30 centimeter layer. So it is a huge quantity of nitrogen compared to what we are applying through fertilizer. Through fertilizers, we are applying something like 100 to 200 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare. But this much nitrogen is already available in already not available but present in the soil, and we label it as soil nitrogen. If you look at uh, the schematic diagram on the right hand side, you will see the biggest boxes of soil organic matter and soil nitrogen, because it's a huge quantity. And compared to it, we apply fertilizer nitrogen and manures, um, and in the center of it there is a soil mineral and pool. All these inputs, including soil organic matter and soil nitrogen, they 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 give nitrogen in the form of ammonium or nitrate to soil mineral and pool, and this is from this pool that plant roots they take up nitrogen, and this is the same pool from which nitrogen is lost from the soil, whether by leaching or through gaseous losses. So the important thing here is that the nitrogen fertilizer or fertilizer nitrogen which we are applying, it is not that it works as a replacement of N mineralized from the soil organic matter. So it also contributes. If you look at this uh, process, it means nitrogen fertilizer which we are adding to our soils, a big portion of it is actually going to the soil organic matter, and then after that this is coming back, it is getting mineralized and it contributing to soil mineral pool. So it's not simple addition or subtraction, that whatever nitrogen we are applying through the fertilizer, it is going to replace the nitrogen which is being supplied by soil organic matter or soil nitrogen mineralization. In fact, if you look at the literature which is available now, it says that when we grow our crops, more than 50% of nitrogen which is taken up by crop plants comes from the soil nitrogen, not from the fertilizer nitrogen. We may have applied 120 kilogram of fertilizer nitrogen to the soil, but more than 50%, around 60 kilos of nitrogen comes from soil nitrogen, not from the fertilizer nitrogen. There are different kinds of, there are, we can distinguish between soil nitrogen and fertilizer nitrogen by using N15 label fertilizers. And these studies by Dordo, Nito et al., and Lada, Jean, these are Lada and Jean, they have reviewed different papers published or using N15 fertilizers, and they found that more than 50% of nitrogen in the crops comes from soil itself, soil nitrogen, which is the storehouse of nitrogen, as I have said earlier, and remaining nitrogen comes from the fertilizer. So we have to see how we can maneuver these two sources. There are two important sources: fertilizer nitrogen, soil nitrogen, and their interaction actually that helps us to keep our soils healthy and without. So as I said, the few important things which are this interaction of soil and fertilizer nitrogen, as I said, only about half of the N applied in the current year is assimilated by crops. So the substantial portion of the remaining applied N is incorporated into soil and organic matter. So it means that the nitrogen, but fertilizer nitrogen which we apply, a big part of it goes to the soil organic matter, and fertilizer N accumulated in soil organic matter can persist there for decades. It's not that nitrogen which
ये
provide us
किसने दिया है? सबको दिया?
fertilizer
पूरे क्लास को, आपके
Please
पूरे
mute
क्लास
yourself.
जिसका ऑडियो ऑन है,
अंकुर
Please mute,
अंकुर
ma'am.
प्लीज
ऑडियो जिसका ऑन है उसको बंद करो पहले आप सब लोग।
विजय सर आपका ऑडियो ऑन है।
हु इज कंट्रोलिंग, जो कंट्रोल कर रहा है अंकुर उसको बोले सबका ये बंद कर दे वीडियो और ऑडियो एक्सेप्ट स्पीकर।
जी मैं कर रहा हूँ सर, कर रहा हूँ।
Oh,
सबका बंद कर दो।
ओके
so as I said, only 50% of nitrogen which is taken from the fertilizer nitrogen, 50% comes from the soil, but the 50% nitrogen which is not taken up by the plants, fertilizer, 50% of fertilizer nitrogen which is not taken up by plants, a big chunk of that actually goes into soil organic matter, and it can persist there for decades. And the soil N pool, which is enriched by N applications in previous years, becomes available for uptake by croplands in subsequent years. It's not that very next year it will be gone. Fertilizer, it has been found in different studies that nitrogen which has been applied, fertilizer nitrogen which has been applied today, even after 30 years or more than that, you can still find it in soil nitrogen pool. So then the question arises, how much fertilizer nitrogen is lost, as we always say that nitrogen fertilizers are culprits in terms of polluting groundwater or nitrous oxide emissions. Only those portions of the annual fertilizer N inputs that exceed the amount of N either removed by the harvested crop and that becomes a part of the soil and pool is vulnerable to losses to the environment. And this is around, depending on the soil, it is around 25%. It can vary from say 10 to 35, but it is not that whatever nitrogen we are applying to our soils, it is going to be lost. The summary statement is that more than around 50% of it gets into soil organic matter and it persists there for decades. This is a very important thing which generally young scientists, they don't consider it, because they simply think that it's a simple plus and minus. It is not simple. There's a very strong interaction between soil nitrogen and fertilizer nitrogen, and this interaction actually guides that how soil health is going to be influenced because of fertilizer nitrogen application. So this is the summary statement up till now. In the context of long-term fertilizer use in crop production, soil health is represented by soil organic matter and soil nitrogen. This we must keep in our mind all the time. We must maintain soil organic matter levels, soil nitrogen levels in the soil. Only then we can ensure that soil health is we are keeping our soils healthy. So what happens when we apply on a long-term basis? inadequate amounts of fertilizer nitrogen rates. I mean, as I said, there were three categories of farmers: those who are applying adequate amount of fertilizer or recommended doses of fertilizer, one other one more or less than that. So I start with the farmers who are applying less or less than or inadequate amount of fertilizer and rates on a long-term basis. My topic is I'm talking about these effects are not for 1 or 2 years, but long-term. Say for 10 or 15 or 20 years. If some farmer is applying fertilizer at low levels, then what happens is he's growing crops, but he's applying less fertilizer nitrogen. So what happens is, as I said, it is the soil nitrogen which is supplying most of the nitrogen to the crop. So what happens is with time, due to inadequate application of fertilizer nitrogen, soil and pool gradually gets depleted. And once soil and pool is depleted, soil doesn't remain to be healthy. Its soil health declines. And then second thing, when we are not applying adequate amount of fertilizers, the total organic matter inputs, which are nothing but above ground plus below ground net primary productivity minus harvested yield. This is the amount of organic matter which is left in the soil. And if it also under inadequate fertilizer and rates, it also becomes inadequate. And after year, if we do that year after year, it doesn't lead to adequate soil organic matter buildup. So in both ways, we are working against soil health. Soil and pool is gradually getting depleted, and there is not enough buildup of soil organic matter, and both the things represent soil health. So by using inadequate amount of fertilizer and rates year after year, we are definitely going to have soil health deterioration. So this is the first thing which is very, very important. Some people say that by applying less amount of fertilizer, we are not damaging soils, but we are actually damaging the soil health actually. So second is when we apply optimum fertilizer and rates. Optimum means the recommended doses of fertilizer and rates. What happens is that we have high total organic matter production and inputs, because the growth is optimum and it leads to soil organic matter buildup, which is the most important measure of soil health. Secondly, if we are applying optimum fertilizer rates, we have reduced microbial activity due to acidity generated by nitrogen fertilizers during ammonium oxidation. And if it is not controlled, it may lead to reduced soil organic matter decomposition. And in certain ecosystems, fertilizer nitrogen adversely affects the activity of lignin degrading microorganisms, and thereby it favors the accumulation of organic matter in the soil. So by applying recommended doses of fertilizer, and we always lead to buildup of soil health. There are three different ways it works. And then let's come to the most important part, which is very important for us, is that many farmers who opt for applying more than the recommended doses, what happens is it leads to increased accumulation of residual inorganic, and because nitrogen which we are applying is not required actually in that much quantity. So whatever inorganic nitrogen which we apply, it accumulates in the soil, and it stimulates mineralization of already present soil organic matter, and it results in its net loss. So when there is a net loss of soil organic matter, you will agree with me, it leads to deterioration of soil health. Secondly, if we are applying too much of nitrogen year after year, it reduces the CN ratio of crop residues, even their decay is accelerated. So both ways we get soil health deterioration because of excess amount of fertilizer nitrogen. So excess amount of fertilizer is a culprit, but optimum is good. But when we apply less than the optimum, again we are, as I explained to you, in that case also the soil health is decreasing. So these are the three scenarios, and so I have just summarized here in this schematic diagram. When we apply up to the level 3, it is up to the optimum level. Up to that, yields increase, soil or inorganic nitrogen decreases because most of the nitrogen which we apply is used by the crop, and nitrogen use efficiency is also decreasing after that. So if we are applying more of fertilizer nitrogen, then yields don't increase, but inorganic nitrogen increases like anything, and as I have explained, it leads to loss of soil organic matter. Nitrogen use efficiency is also very low under when we apply too much of fertilizer nitrogen, which is obvious actually. When we apply more of a nutrient, its efficiency decreases. So I come to the two graphs which I showed in the beginning. One is cereal grain production in our country and fertilizer end use. So although they look like as if they are going side by side or both are increasing, but fertilizer end use when it is the total fertilizer end use irrespective of which farmer use more or which farmer less, but it's not as simple as it looks like. We have to distinguish between farmers who are applying more fertilizer, who are applying less fertilizer. Application of more fertilizer is more dangerous because it leads to soil health deterioration, and this is the reason that we get a very steep fall in partial factor productivity of fertilizer nitrogen when we keep on increasing more and more fertilizers use. Uh, so the reasons for declining of nitrogen use efficiency after the graph which shows partial factor productivity, there is a decrease in NGOE occurs. It's a natural. I mean, when farmers move yields higher along with the fixed and response curve, like in this graph, you see this is simple response curve, and as we go up in the response curve, nitrogen use efficiency decreases. So initial decline in NGO is expected, but in the last 2-3 decades, low fertilizer N uptake efficiency is because of loss of soil organic matter or soil health decline, excess application of fertilizer nitrogen, and inorganic fertilizer N management. There are three things we have talked about: excess application of nitrogen, but loss of SOM is generally not felt until it really happens. And inadequate fertilizer management is a big culprit in terms of reduced nitrogen use efficiency as well as soil health. So I have taken up a sort of a statement which a farmer says that we put in over 200 kilogram of urea per acre in our fields this time, but the yields have been far lower than last year. This statement, another farmer says that urea has completely messed up our lives. These statements simply confirm that when you are applying too much of fertilizer nitrogen year after year, soil health gets deteriorated, and once soil health starts getting deteriorated, we have to apply more and more fertilizer to get the same yield levels. This is what is happening with the farmers who are applying more fertilizers, and that's why he says urea has completely messed up our lives. And it indicates that soil is getting addicted to nitrogen. When we apply more nitrogen, its soil health deteriorates. It means it is not able to supply enough soil nitrogen to the crop, and to get the same yield levels, we have to apply increasing amount of nitrogen fertilizers year after year. And this is what is happening in many parts of our country, particularly in Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh, and some parts of Telangana also. So it is very important that we never apply more fertilizer more than what is required by the crop. So I will the statement which I have made, or the thing which I will try to show you some data from long-term experiments which are going on in the Indo-Gangetic plains for last several decades. If you look at these experiments, they have been, this is the study period, they are pretty more than 2 decades. And this is the amount of fertilizer nitrogen applied: 120 kilogram nitrogen to rice and wheat is the recommended dose. So that's why we are applying here 240 or 180 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare per year. And the soil depth we have taken is 15 to 20 centimeters. If you look at soil organic carbon now, because soil organic carbon is the measure of soil health, if you look at initial and final, there is always a increase in soil organic carbon by applying nitrogen fertilizers. Only decrease in one or two places where the soils we started were virgin. So when we start a virgin soil, there's a steep fall in organic carbon because it's brought under cultivation, and so organic carbon lies. But in other soils, there's always a positive change in soil organic carbon, or we can say that soil health was actually increasing when we applied recommended dose of fertilizers. And look at the next slide. Uh, Before that, I would like to emphasize that the real culprit in terms of soil organic matter loss is tillage, because all the experiments which I have shown to you, all the fields were tilled. So tillage means, as I said in the beginning, tillage is something which always leads to soil organic matter loss. And many times we think that it is because of fertilizer. Now look at those plots where we didn't apply any fertilizer. Fertilizer and application is zero here because they were control plots. And now if you look at the change in soil organic carbon, it is negative most of the times. So what does it mean? We didn't apply any fertilizer, but still soil organic carbon is decreasing or soil health is decreasing. It is the effect of tillage. And we give a very blanket statement that because of fertilizer, nitrogen which we are applying, the soil health is decreasing. It is not the case. Soil health is not decreasing if we are applying optimum amount of fertilizer nitrogen. So these are sum up of different experiments which have been published. This is a 64 long-term experiments, 104, 20, and 46. Some are lowland rice, some are all crops. And if you look at percent increase in soil organic carbon due to fertilizer application over the unfertilizer control, so there is a 12.8%, 8%, or more than 10% increase in soil organic carbon because of applying fertilizer. And you must keep in mind that most of these experiments, the plots were tilled. So the increase can be even more than this if they were not tilled. So to blame the fertilizer nitrogen that they are leading to soil health deterioration is not correct. Only thing is that we need to apply optimum doses of fertilizer nitrogen. So to sum up, long-term use of higher or lower than the optimum fertilizer nitrogen doses, it leads to soil health decline. As I've explained, if you apply more than the recommended doses or less than the recommended doses, in both the cases, soil health declines. Reasons may be when we apply less fertilizer, decline is because of soil and loss, and if we apply more than the recommended, the soil health declines because of loss of organic matter. And if this thing happens, if when soil health declines, it means what happens is that it leads to reduced availability of soil and to plants, which leads to decline in yield levels with time. To compensate the yield decline, we apply more and more fertilizer to maintain those yields. And the worst part is that when we start applying more and more amount of fertilizer nitrogen to our soil, the soil health further deteriorates. And this is why I use the word addicted. When soil health starts declining, the soil becomes addicted towards higher fertilizer nitrogen doses. And this is the worst part. We should keep in mind that we should keep, if we want to keep our soils healthy, we need to apply only those amounts of fertilizer nitrogen which are really required by the crop in the soil. So I conclude that long-term application of fertilizer and dose is higher or lower than the optimum. So they lead to both higher or lower lead to soil health deterioration. But optimum use of fertilizer nitrogen in crop production not only ensures sustainable high crop yields, but also maintains or enhances soil health, which is a very important conclusion, but it is linked with only optimal use of fertilizer nitrogen. And then I have said already several times, soils become addicted to fertilizer nitrogen when soil health deteriorates due to long-term use of high fertilizer N rates in crop production. And ideally, fertilizer nitrogen should be managed on a field scale or a site-specific basis, because all the fields, like all the human beings, they differ from each other. All the fields also differ from each other. No two fields are same. So we have to find means and ways to find out how much is the optimum fertilizer nitrogen requirement of a particular field. And there are fortunately now some SSNM um, techniques are available by which we can work out how much is the nitrogen requirement of a particular field. And if we can do that, we can ensure both optimum yields as well as better soil health. So the carry-home messages are simple. Fertilizer N management should consider the huge role of soil N in N nutrition. I think you understand it by that. That soil N, we should not ignore it. We don't take soil nitrogen for granted. If we lose soil N level, the crop nutrition, nitrogen nutrition of crops will be adversely affected, and that then the process of soil health declining starts. On long-term basis, fertilizer N should be applied neither more nor less. This is a very important thing. We on a Then the optimum dose. Then soil health and efficient nitrogen use go hand in hand. More efficient we are in managing fertilizer nitrogen, the healthier our soil will become, and vice versa. So before I finish, I would like to share with you what are sort of things we are doing in India now. This graph shows fertilizer nitrogen use, kilogram nitrogen per hectare. It is not the total quantity of fertilizer, because total quantity of fertilizer depends upon how big a country is. Like India is a big country. If you compare it with Pakistan, if you compare it with Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, that has no value, because Sri Lanka is because of its so small size, it is using much less fertilizer. But that's the reason why we use now the measure is fertilizer nitrogen applied per hectare of the land. So if you look at the three graphs, the red one shows North American countries like US and Canada, and the world average or global average is the blue, and the black circles are India. So you can imagine by 1995, India was using less kilogram of nitrogen per hectare than the global average or North America. But after that, we are still applying more and more and more fertilizer nitrogen, whereas those two graphs, they have almost plateaued. So that indicates that the graphs which I have shown you already two times, that more nitrogen fertilizer we apply, more yields we get, is not correct. It is leading to, if we are applying too much of fertilizer nitrogen, it is leading to soil health deterioration, and then we have to apply even more nitrogen fertilizers to get the same yield levels. So don't look into the figures of fertilizer nitrogen use and seed grain production in a political way or in a administrative way, we should look into those graphs as soil scientists and agronomists, and ensure that we apply fertilizer only in those levels which ensure high yields as well as better soil for our future generations. That's it. Thank you.
जी जिस तरीके से
Big
ट्रेनिंग के बाद, जैसे ही ट्रेनिंग खत्म होती है, हमारा एक प्रोटोकॉल है कि 10 से 5 मिनट का हम एक डाउट क्लियरिंग सेशन रखते हैं.
Sure,
तो
sure.
सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स जो हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं, मैं फैकल्टी और साइंटिस्ट से बात नहीं रख रहा हूं. ज्यादातर मैंने अपना ये अनुभव देखा है कि जो स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं वो इनवैलिड क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं कि सर सर्टिफिकेट कब मिलेगा, सॉफ्ट कॉपी में मिलेगा, पीपीटी मिलेगी कि नहीं, वीडियो मिलेगा कि नहीं. तो मैं बता दूं कि सबका वीडियो जो होगा वो मैं ईमेल कर देता हूं शाम को. जो भी रिकॉर्डेड वीडियो होता है मैं सबको ईमेल कर देता हूं. आप काइंडली अपना वैलिड क्वेश्चन, जो आपका वैलिड क्वेश्चन हो, उसको आप पूछ सकते हैं डाउट के लिए. ठीक है, आप क्वेश्चन, हाँ, चैट बॉक्स में आप क्वेश्चन लिखिए, मैं उसको पढ़ूंगा और उसको रिजॉल्व करेंगे.
Okay, so big thank you to our esteemed guest, Dr. Vijay Singh, for gracing us with his presence and enriching our event with his profound words on how the vitality of our soil mirrored the health of our planet. Moreover, the discussion about the interaction of soil nitrogen and fertilizer nitrogen and effect of long-term nitrogen fertilization with higher dose was very informative, sir. Let us cultivate a future where fertilizer nurture soil vitality, where
Sure.
agriculture thrives in harmony with nature. Together, let's sow the seeds of change for a flourishing earth. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I also enjoyed delivering my talk, and I hope our young scientists or budding scientists, they will take this message along and work in a way that we use nitrogen fertilizers judiciously, so that we keep on producing enough food for the masses, but at the same time, we ensure that health of our soils, they are maintained or enhanced. Any questions, if they have, you are most welcome. I will try to clear that. Any questions you have?
हैंड रेज करिए आप, जिससे हम आपका माइक जो है ऑन कर सकें. आप हैंड रेज करिए, जिसको कोई क्वेश्चन पूछना है वो हैंड रेज कर दीजिए, हम उनका माइक ऑन कर देंगे. डॉक्टर नाजिर हुसैन साहब को जरा अनम्यूट करिए.
Hello, good evening, sir. This is Dr. Nazir from KBK Kargil, Ladakh.
Oh, I see. Great. हाँ जी, बताइए.
Sir, my question is actually there is current trend of natural farming in India. So can you suggest me that this natural farming can substantiate or overcome the issue of the chemical fertilizer?
That's it. So you must understand that whatever farming we do, organic farming, natural farming, or fertilizer farming, whatever we do, we need to supply enough nitrogen or nutrients to the crop which we are growing.
Exactly.
If due to one or the other reason the supply of nutrient is decreased or reduced, you will agree with me that it will reflect upon the yields as well.
Sure, sir.
Huh?
Yes.
So
Yes.
My experience or the way I look at the thing is that natural farming, maybe it's good for a year or so, but after a couple of years, we will not be able to keep our soils healthy or enough soils. We will not be able to keep our soils in a way that they can supply enough nutrients to our growing crops. If we are producing high yields by applying organic manures or fertilizers, when we are producing high yields, it means they are removing high amount of nutrients also. So
Yes, exactly.
until and unless you are able to replenish those nutrients which are lost, or I don't say the lost, which have been removed actually in the form of grains, you cannot sustain high yields forever. So natural farming, it's good, say for a year or 2 or 3 at the most, till the soil is able to supply enough nutrients to the crop. In organic farming, we can go for a couple of more years, because in organic farming we do supply nutrients through organic manures. But whatever system we follow, we have to ensure that nutrients which have been removed or exported in the form of grains, they are somehow replenished in the soil. Otherwise, system will not be able to work for a long time. Is it okay or
नेक्स्ट.
हाँ जी.
जी
Dr.
सर, आप
Ganesh,
बोलिए.
sir, you can ask your question.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Pasta Pandey, sir.
You have introduced me, isn't it?
Yeah, sir. I am also from soil science, and recently I saw you in Bhopal, where the meeting was headed by Dr. S.K. Chaudhary on millets, and you have really raised a very nice question, sir.
No,
So,
you are mistaken. I was never in Bhopal in the last 10 years.
okay, sorry, sir.
Maybe
So, sir,
similarly looking Sardarji was there, and you are thinking of me.
no,
Anyway,
sorry, sir, sorry.
anyway,
Sir, yeah,
let's
sir. Yeah, sir. I want to know about actually your perspective on nano urea, sir, as fertilization.
Well, very tricky question you have. There's a lot of politics involved in it. it's
Yes,
very
sir.
personal feeling from my side. I don't recommend it at all.
Okay.
It is not going to, it is not, it's the same, the answer which I have given to Nazir Hussain, it's the same answer actually. A bottle of nano urea contains how much nitrogen? 40 gram of nitrogen, something like that. Hmm? In whatever form it is, nano form or whatever form it is. How can you, a crop of rice or wheat, it removes about, it removes more than 100 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare in any year, any season. So how can you ensure that a bottle of nano urea, when applied, will be able to supply from where the nitrogen will come, which is to be taken up by the crop to produce enough yields? Again, the thing is, if a farmer has started using nano urea, it is almost amounts to natural farming or organic farming sort of thing. You might have noticed that they never recommend application of nano urea alone. They always recommend that you apply a bag or two of bag of urea, and along with that you apply nano urea. So it means they are supplying some nitrogen in the form of ordinary urea, and the remaining part they apply to nano urea. So what happens is that this nano urea, combination of nano urea plus the ordinary urea, will keep you giving respectable yields for say 3-4 years. But then, because we are not able to replenish our soil with enough nitrogen which is needed by the crop, then the trend will be falling, and both soil health as well as crop yields, they will be adversely affected. So I do not see any merit in using nano urea on a long term basis. It can survive only for 2 or 3 seasons, depending upon if the soil is really good. If the soil is very rich earlier, then it may work for a couple of more years. But if the soil is not really very good, or not good in terms of supplying nutrients, it won't work more than 1 or 2 seasons actually. So I don't recommend going for nano urea at all. This is this is what I have learned uh, about nitrogen.
Yes, sir. But means I'm a little bit confused. Like, why so many trials, government-funded trials are there for nano urea? Like in every university, they are just giving these trials, even though the results
Yeah,
are
it is.
actually not that much visible.
To my mind, it is a sort of well, I don't shouldn't say it, but maybe there is some political motivation in doing that. Maybe I don't know. I don't know it, but it was recommended after not conducting enough trials. Actually, the initially introduction of nano urea was not done for following the protocols which of ICR, to my mind, and I am still very much convinced, and I don't say it, I mean, that there's any doubt that this product will not work for more than a couple of years. And many farmers who have been using it, they have started already feeling that this is not able to keep the yields levels same. And then, as if you look at the my presentation, by using nano urea, soil health will also start declining after a couple of years. So I very forcibly say that this product is not going to solve our problems. It will in fact create problems for our farmers in the long run.
Okay, sir. Very nice interaction, sir. And it's
Mhm.
been 10 years. Please do come to MP to visit Bhopal as well as Gwalior, sir.
Well, I'm already in
Thank you
Gwalior.
so much, sir.
I'm sitting in Gwalior
सर
already.
AK दीक्षित जी को अनम्यूट करिए.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you very
great
much.
evening,
Thank you
sir.
very much. I'm sorry if my answers are not really what you wanted to listen from me, but this is what I feel.
So very direct, because recently I've attended some sessions and people were not so clear about nano urea.
That's the
But
reason.
at least you have given a point of view.
Yeah, well,
You have given a point of view.
sure. I stick to my point actually, and you will see that in next couple of years, the thing will be very clear to everybody. Right.
Yes, sir.
Any other?
हेलो
हेलो।
दीक्षित साहब।
हेलो
हाँ हाँ जी, एक दीक्षित।
आवाज आ रही है सर?
हाँ जी हाँ जी, आ रही है जी, आवाज आ रही है जी, आप बताइए।
Sir, many thanks and congrats to for excellent delivery about the nitrogen use efficiency. But one my query is,
हम्म,
uh, hello,
ये पीछे से आवाज बहुत आ रही है, कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा। हाँ हाँ जी, हाँ अब बोलिए।
hello.
हाँ जी, हेलो।
My query is, when you are apply the nitrogenous fertilizers, 50% utilized and 50% it absorb in the soil organic matters.
No, it's not like that. 50%, almost 50% is taken by the crop, and out of the remaining 50%, something like 20-25% is taken up by the soil organic matter, and rest is available for losses through leaching or through gaseous losses actually.
Losses for leaching and volatilization losses. Some
Yeah.
research has been already stated that 50 more than 50% nitrogen losses done by the volatilization losses. Is it correct or not?
Well, it depends upon the situation in which we are working. If the soil conditions, if you are working with a very light soil or a sandy soil, huh?
जी 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 जी
and
जी
the possibility of losses through leaching are more, then more will be lost. I'm talking of a normal soil. In normal soils, losses are not more than 25%. But if the conditions are not very conducive or if the conditions are very adverse, then the losses can be more also. Like I give you example. There is a urea super granules are available. A lot of people use in Bangladesh and India also. If though they are very good material because they ensure that nitrogen is taken up by the crop in large quantities. But if those urea super granules are applied in a sandy soil, sandy loam or loamy sand soil, and rather 70%, 60 to 70% of nitrogen applied through urea super granule is lost by leaching.
Sir,
So,
sir.
so the conditions in which you are working are very important when we are talking about the losses.
Sir.
Yeah.
One thing is also just I want to clear that we are suggesting the slow release nitrogenous fertilizers for enhancing the nitrogen use efficiency.
Sure. They are really
So
good thing. They are good materials. We must go for them. The only problem with the slow release materials is that the cost of those materials is very high, and the benefit which we get by applying those materials is not enough or more than what we are spending. So if the cost of production of slow release fertilizer is reduced by the industry by more innovations, then they are the best materials for we should give to the farmers.
Thank you very much, sir. A lot of thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hanji.
It was really a good session. When my question is, today a lot of people are talking about biostimulants, which maintain the soil health, and there are thousands of products available in the market. And what is the point of view?
I'm a fertilizer man. I'm
What
not
is
very.
your point of view, sir?
I don't feel myself very competent that I can answer your question because I am not very much knowledgeable about biostimulants, which are so many are in the market, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't give any statement about them because I'm not knowledgeable enough about them actually.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other? Ankur Sharma from
Conclude करते हैं.
Hello, Nitin, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Any more questions?
No, sir, I think we can conclude.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed giving my point of view about fertilizer, nitrogen, and soil health, and I'm happy that you listened me very in a serious way. And I wish that young scientists like you should take these messages and do more work on this so that our future generations they are benefited not only by producing more food but keeping our soil healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
As our program draws to a close, we appreciate your time and participation. So goodbye for now. Have a great evening, all of you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice time. You too. Thank you very much.